Well, let's turn our attention now to this. As always, my first guest this afternoon is someone with an unusual or interesting profession. And today we are taking you into the world of canines because I'm joined by Rob Alaney, who is a dog behavior trainer and founder of the Canine Instructor Academy. Rob, thanks so much for joining us this afternoon.
My pleasure. Thank you for inviting me.
How do you get to where you are now? I.e., how do you become a dog behavioral trainer?
Well, there's different routes. I mean, there is no regulation at the moment of dog trainers or behaviorists, so literally anybody could do it. There's no law that says you couldn't call yourself a dog trainer tomorrow or a dog behaviorist tomorrow and start going out and practicing.
Right.
So there are courses that you can do. I run the Canine Instructor Academy, and we run courses to train trainers. There are universities that do up to degree level courses on becoming a behaviorist. So it's really up to kind of the individual what road they choose to take, whether they want to go down the practical road, the academic road, or they just want to kind of have a go. So you meet lots of people who say, I'm a this and a behaviorist. I'm a this and a behaviorist. So it's somebody who just decided to kind of put behaviorist on the end of their qualification, inverted commas. So you can go whichever road you want to go.
But obviously the innate skill is that you can get the dog to behave. I mean, that's the real thing, isn't it?
Well, that's what the client hopes for. Is that once they've paid you all this money and you leave, that the dog is going to be better than it was when you arrived. Yeah. Which is met with varying degrees of success, you know.
Well, I mean, so here's the thing. I mean, we had dogs when I was growing up, so we had Alsatians, and which our dogs, which I love. And I was just saying earlier on that because I live in London and I love those kind of dogs, I don't feel like I've got enough space for them. But obviously, they're small dogs, big dogs, whatever it might, large dogs, whatever it might be. The challenge, I think, for any owner is how to get them to behave the way you want them to behave.
Oh, yes.
So where should that start, I think, is really, because often people are very kindly rehoming animals that maybe have been, you know, they found or they've gone to one organization or the other to kind of rehome these, to take in these animals. And so surely there must be difficulties and challenges around that.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, a couple of things that are really, really common mistakes is actually one of them is picking the wrong dog.
Oh, right. How do you know what the right dog is?
Well, that's a very complicated question. What usually happens is people initially pick a breed based on appearance.
Yeah.
They like the look of that dog, and then they go and do some what they consider to be research to kind of reinforce what they've already decided. So often they'll look on a, love your German Shepherd page, and they hear all the things that they want to hear because, of course, the page is biased towards that breed. It's like asking a parent of a naughty child what their child is like.
Yeah.
They'll tell you their child is wonderful. It's all the other children that are a problem. So often they then read the things that say the things that they wanted to hear. Yeah. So they then decide that is the right dog, but there often may be lots of other elements that they just didn't take into consideration.
Yeah.
So they suddenly find that the dog isn't kind of behaving the way that they thought it was. I remember once working with a couple who picked a husky, and when I asked them why they chose a husky, because they couldn't really be less suited to a husky than they were, and they said, well, they'd always wanted to have a child with blue eyes, and when they found out they couldn't have children, so they saw these puppies with blue eyes, they picked one. And of course, the dog was just behaving like a husky, doing all the things that I would expect a husky to do, but they weren't prepared for that because all they wanted was a dog with blue eyes. So one of the big problems is we don't necessarily choose the right breed. And then having picked it, we then often make some pretty poor choices about how we're going to raise it. Mm. And so by the time it hits puberty, which is when people most often have a problem with it, when it gets to teenage and starts saying, why should I? Mm-hmm. That's when the problems kick in.
So is there a sort of checklist then, if someone listening this afternoon, and I've already got lots of people getting in touch with the program, so I'm going to, put some of their questions to you in a moment, but is there a sort of checklist that people, before they get the dog, should have or should be asking themselves?
Well, yeah, they should do a kind of short list of the things that are most important to them in a dog. Do they want a dog that's got lots of energy, or maybe a dog that's got very little energy? Do they want a dog that molts or doesn't molt? And so they should do themselves a kind of breakdown and then start looking at the breeds that they might think fit their bill. And then what I always say is go to people who are unbiased. and ask them. Go and ask vets, go and ask dog trainers, behaviorists, groomers, people who don't have a vested interest in that breed. And so what do you think about these dogs? And they're much more likely to give you an unbiased perspective. What we tend to do is we ask people who already have those dogs or who are already biased towards them.
Mm.
And of course, they give you a biased answer. Oh, no, they're wonderful, you know. Anyone who's owned a terrier knows that terriers tend to be very, very strong-willed.
Yeah.
But when you read things like the Kennel Club's breed standard, it says the Jack Russell can be a little feisty. And you think, they're a little bit more than feisty, though, aren't they? But of course, it was written by people who are biased towards Jack Russell.
Yeah.
So they say, you know, they can be a little bit feisty.
Oh.
If you'd asked a vet or a dog trainer, they would have probably said, okay, yeah, that's going to be a challenge.
Yeah.
So ask people who are not biased towards the breed that you're looking at, and you'll probably get a much more accurate picture.
I'm just going to throw in Brenda's question because I know she must be listening quite keenly. She says, I've recently fostered a 2-year-old Great Dane. I've always had large dogs. My new dog spent a year unhomed at a dog charity because he kept being sent back because of his behavior. And although at first he was fine with me, he was fine. A few weeks in and I'm covered in bruises where he mouths my arms and legs. He often jumps up and I have to walk him with someone as he pulls too hard for me. He's a great dog. I don't want to follow others who've tried to rehome him and just return him. Can you help?
So Great Danes are normally very, very well-tempered. I mean, as a trainer, I see very few of them, which is always an indicator that there are either very few of them or they don't generally have significant problems. And I think Great Danes generally fall into that latter category. But of course, it is a very big, powerful dog.
Yeah.
Something that people often don't take on when it comes to dogs, they don't really appreciate, is what the most common problem that I see in dogs is. And people will say it's aggression or separation anxiety or pulling on the lead or whatever. But no, the problem that most people have with their dog is that he has no self-control. He's probably already trained. That dog is probably already trained to do all of the things that Brenda wants him to do. Mm-hmm. He just isn't listening. He knows what she wants, but he says, I'm not doing that. It's like your child when you ask them to come in at 10 o'clock and they come in at 3:15.
Yeah.
It's not because they couldn't understand what 10 o'clock looked like. They just made a choice to not do it.
Right.
So what I would want to look at with Brenda is why this dog thinks he can disregard everything that she says. And when she gives that list of problems, I can be pretty sure that there's a whole other list of things that he's not doing either. And what we tend to do is just try and fix the worst ones. And that never works because there's an underlying mentality in the dog that says, well, if I'm not even going to not jump up on people who come in the house, why would I recall in the park? Mm-hmm. You know, if I don't even sit when you tell me, why would you expect me not to chase squirrels? So as a trainer, what we try and do is look at every single issue that dog has, every scenario where he says, I don't have to listen to you. And if you don't address them all, you'll never succeed with the few. So if I were working with Brenda, the first thing I'd say to her is give me a list of every single thing that you wish he did or didn't do. And for you to be successful, you have to address them all. You have to say, no, actually, darling, you have to do everything I tell you. And that creates a dog who's got a better understanding.
Well, that sounds like a tall order, particularly as she didn't have the dog from being a puppy. I mean, in your I mean, obviously you've never met the dog, but I'm just curious, do you think it's something that this kind of behavior can be alleviated, or do you think that it's going to be such a long road?
Actually, usually when myself or one of my trainers or somebody who's done my courses goes and sees a client, usually by the time we leave the house, the client will be saying, I can't believe he's behaving this way.
Right.
Something I tell all my students all the time is that dog training is actually really, really simple. All we need to do in dog training is really the same as teaching people. You give incentives for carrying out the right behavior and you find consequences for the wrong behavior. And if we understand both of those pieces of information, we'll usually make the right choice. You know, we don't stop at red lights because we hope we'll please a policeman. We stop at the red light because we think something will probably happen if I don't. And that makes us make the right choice. And it's kind of the same with dog training. So with every dog, you should be finding ways to reward that dog that are effective for that dog. You know, often we'll use food, but the dog says, I'm not motivated by food. Or we'll be using food and the dog is motivated by food, but it's the wrong food. Mm-hmm. So we should be looking for rewards that the dog will want. But we also need to find some kind of disincentives, some things that will make him go, oh, I kind of wish I hadn't done that now. Which is just the same way that every animal on the planet learns. How does it benefit me and how does it not? And with Brenda's dog, what's happening is there are either really big rewards for not doing as she says, or not very effective consequences for not doing as she says. And it's a balance between those two. So when I'm working with a client, I'll try and find ways to fill those voids. And usually before I leave the client's house, the dog is behaving better because he understands now it's more profitable to do so.
We know that a lot of dogs are abandoned, potentially because of the kind of things that you've been discussing, that you've been telling us this afternoon. And that is a kind of vicious cycle, isn't it? Because they're abandoned, maybe someone takes them on, then they're abandoned again. But also the other thing that makes the headlines are these dogs that seem to be potentially out of control, who go into into attack mode, it seems, and their behavior seems beyond the pale. And we've heard sadly, some really horrendous stories, news items that have come out from that. I know that you've reported in court about this. What are your thoughts? Because there are certain breeds that are banned, as we know, but there are other breeds where people say, oh, is it borderline? Are these breeds borderline? Are they violent enough that we should be concerned about them? I wonder what your opinions are.
Well, so the thing is, we've always had breeds that were potentially dangerous, that in the wrong hands are big enough or powerful enough to do real damage. This is not a new thing.
Yeah.
Everyone's acting like, we've got the XL Bully or we've got the Pit Bull Terrier and these are devil dogs. We've always had dogs that were capable of killing people. A lot of the dogs, the breeds that we have, were designed originally to kill people. But it's not about the dog, and this is where we always go wrong. We think the problem is the dog, and when you ban the breed, so let's suppose somebody who's ignorant of how to manage a dog gets a large, powerful dog, and that dog starts killing people because it's owned by ignorant people. So we ban that breed. The ignorant person doesn't just suddenly then become intelligent. The ignorant person then goes out and gets another breed and does exactly the same thing.
Yeah.
So we keep looking at the dog as though the dog is the problem. No, the problem is the person. And if we get the wrong people getting the wrong dog, it doesn't matter what breed it is. How many of us are sick to death of people in the park having what are not considered to be dangerous breeds that come charging up and jumping all over your dog. And you say, excuse me, can you get hold of your dog, please? And they say, well, he's just having fun. He's just playing. That's an ignorant person. And that person will go out and get another dog if you ban that one. But you see, the problem isn't the dog. The problem is trying to educate people on how to be responsible with it. And if we do that, then it doesn't matter what breed you've got. You've just got to bring it up properly. And a lot of the dogs that we see in rescue are kind of pubescent. They're teenage. They get to that point where the owner thinks, I can't manage the dog. And then they get rid of the dog. But in fact, the problem was the way they educated it. And so that by the time it got to 7, 8, 9, 10 months old, it was out of control. That wasn't because of the breed. It was because of the person who had it, who didn't educate it properly.
We're sadly running out of time, but I need to ask you this thorny question. Online, you often see dogs licking their owners' faces, and the owners kissing their dogs. And where do you stand on this thorny question?
It's not thorny for me at all. I love my dogs, but I've seen the places their tongues go, and I personally do not want that as skin cream. No, I love my dogs, but they can't lick me. They don't lick me. I don't encourage them to lick me. If other people want to be licked by their dogs, knock yourself out. But if I come and visit you, I don't want your dog to lick me either. I just think that there are things that we should probably teach dogs to do that won't potentially come back to haunt them. And I think that that's one of those things where they lick the baby then and everybody goes mad, or they lick somebody who doesn't like it and they get really upset. So I'm always about teaching my dog things that I think are likely to prevent him ending up in problems later. And I don't want to swap saliva with my dog. That's not happening.
Thank you. I'm so glad you said this, Rob, because every time I see it, I go, oh, this is so... Listen, we've run out of time, but will you come back on the programme at some point in the future? It would be lovely to have...
I'd be happy to. It's been good fun.
Oh, thank you so much. Let me give people details. I'm speaking there to the dog behaviourist and trainer, Rob Alleney, and you can find out more about him and the work he does at Rob Alleney. Alleney is spelled ALLEYNE.co.uk. So roballeney.co.uk, or his Instagram page is at Rob Alleney. So it's simple, so you can find him there. What a great guest. And honestly, if you kiss your dog or your dog kisses you, now I know I can tell you off. Here's Billy with the Travel.